If I knew Secret of the Mimic was going to be front and center at this year's Steel Wool PAX booth, I would have waited until this week to make a video on it. I figured since the game is coming out next year and we just got the teaser for it, that we might get like a picture or two, but nothing too major. But not only did we get a full demo, which we don't have any footage for, but we have some photos and summaries, but a real life model of the new animatronic named Jackie. We are so back. So I thought today I would recap what we know, even though we went over it 2 weeks ago, and talk about what we just learned. That way I can tell you exactly what the game is going to be like when it comes out next year.
Exactly wrong.
What?
You heard me.
Who invited you?
Tails Denier says what?
What?
I knew it. You still don't think this game will prove TalesGames is true.
I never said that. All I think is that this game is going to be a make it or break it for TalesGames, and it's worth exploring what versions of this game could definitively break the TalesGames theory, even if I more so believe TalesGames nowadays.
Well, I have reason to believe that this game will finally prove once and for all that the books are within continuity of the games, because it's going to happen within one of the stories.
Alright, whatever. Get back in the box. Maybe we'll hear you out later.
You can just hear me out now, it's not going to take.
Back in the box.
You'll regret that.
Anyway, slices, put on your aprons, and let's bake ourselves a theory. If this feels out of place, it is. I realize I never explained this, and I'm gonna have to put it somewhere else. TalesGames refers to the theory that the Tales and the Pizzaplex books exist one-to-one within the game's continuity. That like those events are directly things that happen within the games. I should have specified that. So what did we know before PAX West? Because I thought that's all we were going to know for like 4 months. Well, we only got this teaser during the FNAF Anniversary Week, which showed us a lot of good information. But the major points in it are that we get the date 1979, this carpet of the 70s could be a Shining reference. As the shot pans up to this box, we get the music that plays when calming down the puppet in all its iterations. And the shot ends with this Jack-in-the-Box character with similar eyes to the Mimic peeking out from the top of it. And that's pretty much all the information we got directly from this teaser. I had a theory based on that teaser and we'll touch on it, but we just got a whole lot more information over this past weekend with PAX. Like an insane amount of information for a game that was announced within the same month. So let's go see what happened at PAX West from the perspective of other people, because I did not get to go. Let's start off with the character itself. Or should we say herself, Jackie. This name and gender were confirmed by folks at PAX. But Jackie goes by she, her, and she looks like this. Terrifying. But I do want to give myself a little bit of credit here. The mouth isn't that one-to-one, but it's pretty damn close with what we were guessing from. Damn. Alright. I guess I'll have to use Freddy. But maybe next year I can use the Toast plushie. As of recording this, we still have not quite hit 200 pledges to make the Toast plushie from Makeshift Real. If you don't know who Toast is, it's the new official mascot for the channel. They've been around for a while, but they are officially the mascot of these channels. Here's some pictures of them that I just commissioned for the second channel, and that'll be up and running next month or so. But here's the concept art for the plushie. If you want to pledge $2 to say that you will purchase the plushie in December when it goes live, the link is right here and in the description. If we get past 200, then the plushie becomes real and will be available for pre-order for people who didn't pledge in December. By any luck, we're already there, but I don't know because I'm recording this on Monday. Anyway, side note, DeRegular Sauce made this, and once again, I am so happy that Steel Wool hired DeRegular Sauce to just make cool shit for them. It's very notable looking at this model that she's missing her lower half, and that her eyes don't match what we see in the trailer. But to be fair, the Jackie we see in the teaser seems a lot more withered than this one. I mean, there's no hat, the hair is gone, and the face looks somewhat cracked, whereas this looks like a new Jackie. So maybe these are taken at different points in time in the game. There is a possibility that this version is actually what she looks like in the demo. And yes, I said demo, there was a, albeit short, but fully playable VR demo at PAX West, which we have no footage of. When I wrote this script a couple days ago, I mentioned that I was going to say, hopefully Dawko or someone has a video with footage by the time of editing so I can use that footage, but it turns out since then, Dawko's confirmed he doesn't, and what I think is likely is that they just don't want anybody recording this gameplay footage. So maybe Steel Wool will show it off at the upcoming Day of the Devs showcase, or they'll just post it on their own YouTube channel. Who's to say? But I'll tell you what, when we get that footage, we're gonna talk about it. But until then, we're not fully out of luck. Although no one's able to record, several people have given very detailed recountings of what happens in the demo. Notably, a very in-depth summary was given to us by Wheat and shared by Ntom on Twitter. There's not a really great way to talk about this, because typically when I cover like new and upcoming stuff, I show what I'm talking about in the background so I can give like commentary while showing what I'm commentating about, but we have no background footage. So I'm just gonna have to say it word for word and try to put up some kind of visual in the meantime. So apologies if I'm just repeating this post word for word. I don't know how else to give you this information. You start out in a sort of dilapidated looking storage area. There's a closed gate in front of you with a machine with a missing piece next to it. You can't do anything with it yet. If you go another way, there's a themed room filled with all sorts of gifts and party decor. The Ruin elephant costume is there, but it's massive and clean. The employee watching their gameplay said it's one of their new characters. There's also a lot of other unidentifiable characters. The room is square, but a lot of these decorations form a barrier through the middle, so you have to go around it to the right. At the far right of the room is a big gift box with a big crank. If you crank it enough, Jackie pops out and says something. They can't remember due to the volume of the PAX crowd, and the crank pops off. Jackie just kind of idles after that in the fully springed out pose. You can use this crank in the slot in the wall to open the earlier blocked gate. We'll pause here for a second. We do have some of the voice lines for Jackie that are used in this demo, but unfortunately we're not sure when or where they're used or if they're used at all. So I'll just play them here since Jackie just said something, and maybe you can piece where you think they go, but we have no way to know for sure what goes where. Here are the voice lines. But if you progress past Jackie, the other half of the room continues. There's a locked door at the far end, but the lock itself is a weird downward sloped cylinder with 2 pinbrick holes, like a Faz wrench input. This area is surrounded by cutouts of what seem to be knights and some slightly medieval theming. Anyway, the crank opens the gate and you can crouch under it. You went through a long hallway. There's a ton of observation windows on the right to what almost look like heavily under construction atrium with multiple floors, smaller than the Pizzaplex and more retro and in construction, almost looking like a dusty warehouse with how under construction and dilapidated it is. The left wall of the observation hall has a bunch of posters. I believe the Fredbears and or Fall Fest posters might have been there, but so were posters for a few other mascots, specifically mascot attractions with different names I cannot remember. One of the characters was green. That's all I remember. Continuing past that, you get to the manager's office. The manager is an upper half of a staff bot with a much more rustic and prototype-esque design. To an extent, think of the metal texture used for the Ruin Mimic model. The whole thing was kind of a dark gray. The upper half is mounted to a base, with a bunch of rectangular buttons on it that the manager presses regularly as its idle animation. I don't believe it says anything to you. At the far back, there's a generator which has a small VR minigame where you have to rev up the generator by pulling a cord a few times in succession. As you rev up the generator, Jackie's arms slink into the room. I think she gets stuck on the door frame and is ripped in half as she tries to get to you. I don't recall if that happens yet, but the animation is extremely fluid, and this thing's big arms are basically going everywhere trying to support her body. The manager turns around and lets out a noise or says something, again PAX crowd, to which Jackie literally destroys it, slamming it to the floor and then throwing the manager at the wall next to you, breaking it open. You end the minigame by running through the hole and falling down a bit below the level of the room, and then the debris under you slowly falls apart until it gives way. Slight note here, people have corrected and added more detail in their replies to this tweet. Jackie is connected to her Jack-in-the-Box, and the box doesn't fit through the door. So that's what she's ripping herself out of. She's ripping her upper body off of that Jack-in-the-Box to fit into the room. Then there's a chase. You're in sort of a utility tunnel area, every now and then going through grating or behind pipes and such. You see Jackie moving around like a spider barely visible. You eventually come across a large open area with an elevator. Riding the elevator up, you see a vent near the walkway in front of you, and Jackie begins crawling out of it. The gate of the elevator opens and the chase begins, as you basically have to keep moving or you get killed, though it's not too hard. Every now and then the switches you have to pull which open doors ahead of you. Sometimes the switches are out of the way, so you have to be quick. Later on in the chase, Jackie runs from the hallway in front of you. You pull a switch, smashing the door to its hallway on top of Jackie's head, stopping her for a bit. Really well done animations this entire time, by the way. Doing a U-turn down another hallway, you come across a conveyor belt that's blocked, and another generator minigame to get the conveyor belt started. Once it starts, it takes you into a vent. After enough crouching through the vent, eventually you'll fall through one of the panels where Jackie corners you. The movement locks you in place for the rest of the demo. it ends on a cliffhanger. So yeah, that's crazy. I cannot stress enough how crazy it is that we already have a demo, albeit short, for a game that was announced literally 3 weeks ago. But I guess it's a good thing that a game coming out next year already has some playable parts of it. This demo is insane, and I really hope we get some official footage of it within the next few months because it will drive us insane. It's already driving me insane. This is my white whale. But what does this change about what we know about Secret of the Mimic? What is all this information telling us? It doesn't necessarily change much, but it is going to color our expectations. 2 weeks ago, I made a theory about this game that was heavily influenced by this tweet from FNAF Paper Pals, which, joke or not, made a very good connection towards Jackie and this Paper Pal. I do think Jackie is going to be one of the oldest animatronics we've ever seen, possibly on par with Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. So being paired up like this, like a Paper Pal, makes a lot of sense. Not to mention, the split down the middle of her face is reminiscent of those beta designs of the suits that we got in concept art, or like we would see in a Springlock or Sister Location Funtime. Hell, possibly even the Night Force Springlock suit. Although looking at the full body of Jackie, I think that's much less likely. I don't think Mike's fitting in that. Well, maybe, unless she's like way larger than this model looks in pictures. It's hard to tell until we actually see footage of the game. But even if it isn't the Night Force Springlock suit of Sister Location, I still think this could have been one of the first Springlock suits. In fact, I've been saying since earlier this year that I think Fall Fest was a trial area for new characters, and the favorite characters of Fall Fest were brought to the main restaurants. Maybe it wasn't like a regular thing that they were adding characters, but eventually they were transitioned over. And a lot of the stuff at this PAX West boost bolsters that argument. There were a lot of posters featured at this event, some of them featuring Mr. Hippo and Happy Frog, but then another frog character, and this bee, and this hippie octopus. Characters we've never seen before, but characters that I think were possibly at Fall Fest and tested with the public to see if people liked them. All of this would have been happening before Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was established. Note the coming soon poster as well as the 1979 date. So if Freddy Fazbear's was established in 1983, then these characters I believe existed much before then during Fall Fest. They just weren't as popular as Freddy is the Gang. And in fact, I think this can finally explain our mediocre melodies. These were characters that were tested out in the 70s and not that popular. Their IPs have all but vanished. Their copyright protections have all but run up. Now anybody can make one of them if they want to. That's why the mediocre melodies exist. They were characters at Fall Fest whose copyright ran out. Not to mention, like the summary specified, this facility is filled with a bunch of new unidentifiable character suits. This, again, goes back to that Fall Fest argument. Brand new characters that are just left to be forgotten. And I think Jackie was one of them, but not just left to be forgotten. For some reason, and we'll learn it in this game likely, Jackie was scrubbed from the history of Fazbear, but now we have more context about that teaser. But looking at this demo, to me, there are some major issues presented in the timeline, at least without further context and with the details we have at hand. Now, reminder, again, like I just said, this is an out-of-context demo that we haven't even seen the footage of, so I'm sure we'll know more before and when the game comes out. But this is just speculation based off of what we've seen and heard about. If Jackie is already being controlled by the Mimic, why does she not have legs? In the story The Mimic, by the time Fazbear has the endoskeleton, it's been repaired and given legs. And I hear you, Jackie has no legs because she rips them off in the demo, but she's connected to that Jack-in-the-Box, which to me says she already doesn't have legs. It's an upper half connected to this mechanism. Again, something feels off here to me. Now, we have no context. Maybe Jackie isn't yet being controlled by the Mimic and this is just her programming malfunctioning. Maybe Fazbear already collected the Mimic and used the Mimic 1 program to program Jackie. We're not sure yet, but I think it is notable. Furthermore, and this is my bigger problem, we know for a fact that in the game's timeline, Henry created the original Freddy's gang. After all, in FNAF 6, he says, "The prisons of my making." So if he created the prisons, aka where the missing child incident souls are trapped, he would have had to do one of two things, or both potentially. One, he would have had to kill the missing child incident victims to cause them to be souls, which I do not think he did and we have no evidence saying he did. Or two, he physically built the suits that they're trapped in. This is what most people interpret this line to mean, and it goes along with what we know about Henry in the books, being this technological genius that's capable of making animatronics. So that's all well and good, but here's the issue. These characters from Fall Fest are being made before Freddy Fazbear's Pizza opens up, so the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza cast has not been made yet. In the story The Mimic, Edwin is hired by Fazbear to create animatronics based off of costumes that are sent to him. And in the story, he's making Chica. I've always assumed that this just meant he was making extra animatronics for the company to have on hand. But if in the books, Edwin is making these characters at the same time that he's making the Mimic, we have a major problem here. If the Mimic is made during or before 1979, and the same person who does that made the Freddy's gang, then either in the games, Henry did not make the Freddy's gang and Edwin did, or Edwin did not make the Mimic and Henry did, because this is one person doing this group of events before Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Although, again, to be super clear, there could be some other timeline of events that we're not privy to. After all, Edwin doesn't fully finish the job before the Mimic and the rest of that stuff happens. So it's possible that Edwin started to make the animatronics and Henry finished them. We are not for certain on this because we don't have that extra information. Hopefully this game will give it to us. Obviously, we need to see more of this game to make a final verdict. But if what I think is happening is right, and the Mimic doesn't have legs while in possession of Fazbear's, and whoever made the Mimic made the original Freddy's cast, then I don't think Edwin fits into this continuity. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I'm for TalesGames, and I will be until this game comes out, but this game is going to be a make it or break it moment for TalesGames as a theory. And I think the information we have right now is going to break it.
Wrong.
What are you doing out of the box?
I had to say something. This game is way more pro TalesGames than you're giving it credit for.
How? Genuinely, what do you think it's saying here?
In the new Secret of the Mimic demo / event / hoo-ha that was Steel Bull's PAX booth, we saw a ton of new stuff. As the resident Mimic enjoyer around here, I just had to draw any and every connection I could between what we've seen and what we've read. Let's start with Jackie. Jackie, for all intents and purposes, seems to be our Mimic, although that's not confirmed. In the original teaser she appears in, she does resemble the Mimic wearing a mascot costume. Note the orange eyes here. While not 100% exact, these are almost the same type of eyes that are part of an unused texture from Ruin, one that would have been used when the Mimic is hiding in a mascot costume. That's a whole lot of nothing really, but I just had to point out that despite having a different name, Jackie is almost definitely our Mimic. And this is really important because her appearance establishes a timeline for us right off the bat. Let's say for the sake of the book's continuity that Edwin creates the Mimic. It's the top half of an endoskeleton, and although it is designed to fit into any animatronic suit, most of those of course have legs. Rye earlier brought up the argument that Jackie not having legs means that the books cannot be canon because when we would presumably go to retrieve the Mimic, they would already have legs. That would be a fair argument, but there's an all too convenient time slot that I think we have to address. The time after Edwin leaves the factory and the time before the Mimic is retrieved. We know that at least 2, likely 3 groups were sent in to retrieve the Mimic before Fazbear actually had it in their possession. Group A gave it legs and were then killed off, along with Group B. Then Goku showed up or something and kicked the Mimic's ass so they could retrieve it. Anyway, there's 2 possibilities in my mind to excuse a legless Mimic in a factory that we're exploring. The first is that we're part of Group A. Maybe during the course of the game the Mimic will gain legs and start coming after the player. That's definitely a possibility in my eyes. The second possibility is that this is before Fazbear sends the groups in. We could be playing as a solo investigator hired to retrieve the Mimic 1 code, or even just a night guard at the factory in over our head after Edwin pours his agony into it. Or hell, we could even be playing as Edwin, returning to the factory to destroy the Mimic and failing. The fact is that there's no real contradiction to this being within the book continuity. I mean, even the fact that it takes place in a factory is just huge evidence in support of this theory. Now, I do need to address some difficulties with this. For starters, no, we currently don't have any in-game evidence of Edwin's involvement in the Mimic's creation, but conversely, we don't have any about Henry either. I think either theory is on equal footing, but right now the book line just has a leg up. The main problem with book line theory right now is that it has to add up exactly to the details given to us in the short story, and that's pretty hard to do. On top of that, the book line theory doesn't explain William or Henry's involvements in the story since they never appear there. But if Raya is right, this game would probably show us that wound first inflicted on Henry. And I mean, with a game happening this early in the timeline, I think it would be a totally missed opportunity to not involve William or Henry in some way, especially Henry. Fingers crossed we get an in-game model of this guy and he doesn't look like the Lady Fizzy drawing. That's basically my side of it. I think Bookline has plenty of backing evidence, and based on what we've seen of the game, it feels like the direction that Steel Wool is leaning. And despite its issues, I still think that it's our most likely outcome.
I see where you're coming from, but I still prefer my interpretation.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So...
DVD?
Yeah, sure. In the meantime, what do you think? Who do you agree with? Well, before you agree with someone who isn't me, you should check out his full video with explanation and extra evidence and context for his arguments. But I think I'm right. If you want your fan art featured on the channel, make sure to share with hashtag ToastArt or post it on the official Discord. A huge thank you to the best channel members, the Dough Risers. And until next time, as always, stay toasty, slices.